Coming up, October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and today, Indigenous Pink Day. Melissa Buffalo tells us more. Plus, the nation could soon see the first Indigenous person to lead the National Park Service. We'll learn more about Charles Sams III. I'm Aaliyah Chavez. Join us for those interviews, plus headlines from Indian country today.
Arizona PBS is proud to support Indian Country Today. For 6 decades, we've provided television programs and now digital content. But we go beyond that, sending outreach teams across Arizona, offering workshops in language and literacy, family engagement and community outreach, and supporting tribal communities with early learning and school readiness resources. Join us at azpbs.org.
This is Indian Country Today.
Amarawa Hopa, thank you for joining us. I'm Aaliyah Chavez. Advocates for the sacred site Oak Flat will soon be in federal court. The Apache Stronghold is a nonprofit organization representing the San Carlos Apache tribe and other advocates. It will give oral arguments virtually in the Ninth Circuit Court on Friday. Advocates are urging the court to keep the land from being transferred to foreign mining company Resolution Copper. The company is currently planning to mine for copper ore, and in its process would likely destroy the area. The tribe's attorneys will argue that by destroying Oak Flat, Resolution Copper is violating their freedom of religion because the site is central to their tribal ceremonies. Oak Flat is located in southeastern Arizona. Other motions are in place to stop the mining, including a bill in the U.S. House that would permanently protect the area from any destructive mining proposal. Supporters are planning to protest outside of the courthouse in San Francisco during the virtual hearing. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau made a visit to Kamloops, British Columbia, to visit with an Indigenous community reeling from the discovery of unmarked graves. The stop on Monday comes after Trudeau's apology to First Nations chief Roseanne Casimir. In September, he previously ignored her invitation to attend state-sponsored events for Canada's first National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. The Prime Minister instead went on a vacation. Trudeau faces fierce backlash for this move. He says he is grateful to the community for welcoming him, to hear from survivors, and to learn how to commit himself moving forward.
After September the 30th, she could have chosen to turn her back on me and on the federal government. The community could have said, you know what, we don't need to deal with you anymore. And yet, she reached out. She said, please come and listen and learn.
So far, the remains of more than 1,000 Indigenous children have been uncovered, with numerous investigations underway. Indigenous communities from the Amazon are suing Ecuador's government in an effort to halt oil development. President Guillermo Lasso is leading expansion efforts to increase oil production in the country. The ex-banker previously used official orders to drill for oil in environmentally sensitive jungles. He hoped to attract foreign investment for his mining projects. Indigenous Amazonian leaders want the oil development to stop and are now asking the Constitutional Court, the country's highest judicial body, to restrict the previously issued proclamations. A Waorani tribal leader says the Ecuadorian government only sees his tribe's territory as a resource. Indigenous groups say their next steps is to hold protests against the current administration's social and economic policies. An Osage doctor is the recipient of the prestigious 2021 Rural Physician of the Year Award. Matthew Cameron Rumsey was given the top honor by the Rural Health Association of Oklahoma last week. Rumsey is a specialist in family medicine and has nearly a decade of experience. He also serves as the chief medical officer of the Pawhuska Family Medical Clinic. He was described by his colleagues as someone who enjoys teaching and training hospital staff. Rumsey previously practiced medicine at several Cherokee Nation clinics, and he completed his residency at the University of Missouri Hospital after graduating from medical school with honors. A new book celebrating Native people, Notable Native People, hit the bookshelves this week. It celebrates the lives and contributions of 50 changemakers in Indigenous communities. They are leaders from the past and present. It was written by Cherokee citizen Adrienne Keene. Keene says she wanted to celebrate the vast diversity and vibrancy of Indigenous communities. The 144-page book was illustrated by Chamorro artist Ciara Sana. The book is a collection of short biographies of people like Sequoia, who created the Cherokee syllabary. Also included is prima ballerina Maria Tallchief, filmmaker Sterling Harjo, and engineer Aaron Yazzie. The book also includes issues of cultural appropriation in Indigenous communities and the legacy of colonization. It was published by Penguin Random House and can be found online or at most major retailers. And those are the headlines for Indian Country Today. I'm Aaliyah Chavez. Coming up, breast cancer affects both men and women. We'll hear from Melissa Buffalo from the American Indian Cancer Foundation and learn more about Indigenous Pink Day. Today is Indigenous Pink Day. The color pink has taken on a greater meaning to bring awareness to breast cancer and is celebrated in October, which is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Joining us today is Melissa Buffalo, who is the CEO of the American Indian Cancer Foundation. Nice to see you, Melissa.
Melissa Buffalo, Hi, thank you for having us.
What are your goals for Indigenous Pink Day today?
That's a great question. I'm so excited. The goal of Indigenous Pink is to really raise awareness of the Indigenous cancer burdens and to uplift the voices of our community and celebrate the strength and resiliency of breast cancer survivors everywhere. And so Indigenous Pink really has three aims: to educate our community on the risks associated with breast cancer, and then what are those ways that we can prevent breast cancer, such as breastfeeding, regular mammograms, regular breast exams, exercising, limiting alcohol use, and maintaining a healthy weight. And so also to raise awareness on the breast cancer incidence and mortality disparities among our American Indian and Alaska Native communities. We also want to educate tribal and urban communities on the importance of breast cancer screenings, because we know that cancer screenings are preventative for our women and our men. And we do this through culturally tailored tools and resources that really reflect the communities that we work with. And lastly, just to, hope that there's an increase in cancer screenings through this campaign.
And when did Indigenous Pink start?
We are in our 7th year of celebrating it. We're a young organization. We are in our 10th year of operation. So it's been 7 years of celebrating Indigenous Pink.
I understand that people at home can take part in Indigenous Pink Day. Tell us, how do they do that?
Yeah, so, the American Indian Cancer Foundation is a national organization. We're housed in Minnesota, but thankful to work with, our goal is to support all tribal and urban communities across Indian country. So today folks can wear pink, they can take photos, share your photos on social media and use the hashtag Indigenous Pink, Indigenous Pink Day. Tag the American Indian Cancer Foundation, tag your health clinic that you work with, on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. You can participate in the many webinars that are happening today. You can really normalize that conversation of cancer screenings and be comfortable talking about it. You can get screened, you can schedule that screening. We have 19 tribal and urban clinics today hosting their own events, taking into consideration we're still in a pandemic, so doing that in a safe way to keep our community safe. And then we also see other communities hosting Indigenous Pink and being able to tailor it to their communities. And it's such a great feeling to know that Indigenous Pink is reaching so many communities.
And again, that hashtag is Indigenous Pink. Tell us about the locations that you just mentioned. What kinds of events are they holding?
Yeah, so again, being still in a pandemic and trying to keep our community safe. And we know that some of our communities and our healthcare systems are not back to screening at the pre-pandemic numbers. So, some of them are holding drive-through events, again, getting those culturally tailored resources out, getting reminder cards out, if they're picking up their meds from the pharmacy through drive-through, giving a reminder card or adding some of those resources, thinking about what are those tools that can really, provide education and help to raise the awareness on the importance of breast cancer screening.
Let's talk about the data. You mentioned earlier that this issue of breast cancer doesn't just affect women, it affects men. Tell us about the data in Native communities specifically.
Yeah, so there's been some shocking numbers that, again, looking at the pandemic, I'll kind of talk about pre-pandemic and pandemic. And so we know that 1 in 8 women will be diagnosed with breast cancer in their lifetime. And, for American Indians, we know that breast cancer is the second leading cause of death for American Indian women. Native women have a 7% higher cancer rate compared to non-Hispanic white. And then lastly, Native women have a 10% higher death rate. And we have to really take that into consideration because when they are oftentimes diagnosed, it's at a later stage. So your options are limited. If you're in a rural community, your treatment is most likely hours away. And American Indian women have the longest travel time, which I learned on a webinar before and was trying to figure out where we got that information. But, American Indian women have the longest travel time to get to treatment. And that's hard for anyone to want to travel. And then looking at the drop in cancer screenings during the pandemic, from April to June of 2020, there was a 98% drop in breast and cervical cancer screenings among American Indian women, according to the CDC's National Breast and Cervical Early Detection Program. 98% drop. There was also a drop of 89% for rural communities. So again, you take into consideration where the majority of our tribes are located are rural, if not often frontier considered. And that number is scary. So our job is to really, bring data and have up-to-date relevant data. And that's not always feasible. We look at how often we're not included in data points, whether it's state, local, federal, national. So really trying to raise the importance of how to get accurate data to be able to make informed decisions. Because again, that 98% drop is shocking. And so how do we re-engage cancer screenings during the pandemic and post-pandemic?
What is the data for Native men? And I should add it as well, not just Native men, but non-binary relatives and the spectrum.
The number I pulled from CDC, and I don't know, again, they say that 1 out of every 100 breast cancer diagnoses in the United States is for a man. And so again, was really thankful last year when, our staff brought that up of that all bodies have breast tissue, and that makes sense. It is true that everyone is at risk for developing breast cancer, but we know that women, females are more at risk because of that fat tissue. But again, being able to take in consideration that we want to remind women, men, non-binary, and gender fluid relatives to talk to their doctor about breast cancer screening and being aware of what some of those risk factors and what are some of those preventative ways that they can prevent breast cancer. So yeah, great questions.
How do individuals seek out to be screened for breast cancer? What resources are available to them?
Yeah, you can, I think it's important to realize that, we're advocates of our body and we know our body best. So being able to do a self-breast exam is key. And understanding, what are those ages, what are the factors? Is breast cancer, is it prevalent within your family? I have 2 aunts, who are breast cancer survivors. So for me, I'm always talking to my primary care provider. And I see that, not everyone has that comfort with talking to their primary care provider or possibly even have a primary care provider. We also look at, Indian Health Services set up for primary care and not so much preventative care. So we have to really, work with our clinics and our systems to be innovative and find ways to ensure that women ages 40 to 44 are aware that they have a choice to start checking for annual breast cancer screenings. But at age 45, everyone should be getting a mammogram. And then we look at women, 55 and older, they should switch to mammograms every 2 years. And then you take into account, what are those barriers? At 40, some of them are still having kids or, possibly being a grandma, is there care? And so working with our communities to understand some of those barriers and how we can remove or adjust those barriers. And it takes a whole team effort.
I've heard a lot of stigmas, I guess we can call them, around mammograms and breast cancer screenings. What do you think are some of the biggest misconceptions about the process?
I think there's a fear, right? Sometimes it's better with the unknown. Like, I don't want to know, and you just kind of ignore it. I think thinking about how much an actual mammogram could hurt. I've had one mammogram and it's uncomfortable, right? You are in a room with a stranger, you're taking your top off. And, so again, what is our comfort with our own body and being able to go into a clinic with people you don't know? And oftentimes in our tribal communities, we work with our health departments and other healthcare systems to bring a mammogram bus into the community, and seeing that we're screening at lower rates because of the pandemic. So what can we do to provide comfort to some of these women? Again, it's normalizing that conversation. And I also, we think about, domestic violence victims. It's the last thing they're probably wanting to do is to go get a mammogram and have that intimate moment of, examining their breast. So I think being able to have conversations and talk with your healthcare provider, talk with other friends and family about that, and, finding someone to go with you would probably be helpful and comforting.
I'm really glad that you brought that up. Thank you for talking about, normalizing these screenings that experts and health officials really recommend, especially hearing from you from Native women in particular.
Mm-hmm. It's scary. It's, we at ACAF, the American Indian Cancer Foundation, we always know our job's important. And, our job is cancer prevention, and where we are on that cancer continuum from prevention, diagnosis, treatment, being a survivor and end of life. Like, the cancer rates in Indian country, might not be accurate because that data is not necessarily there. And we're too small, oftentimes seen as, a small enough number. But we know that, again, 1 in 8 women will get breast cancer in their lifetime, and it's the second leading cause of death. So being able to advocate for your body and see that this is a life-saving screening that can help you.
And again, today, October 21st, is Indigenous Pink Day. And Melissa, I understand October 22nd is Pink Day. Is that right?
I believe so. I know we always celebrated the third Thursday of October. And again, just wanting folks to visit our website, visit our Facebook. Today, we have webinars going on throughout the day, again, to, educate, raise awareness, and, help get folks screened.
Melissa Buffalo, thank you so much.
Thank you.
When we come back, a look at the man being nominated to lead the National Park Service. If confirmed, Charles Sams III would be the first Native person to lead that agency. Stay tuned. The National Park Service is the government agency that oversees more than 85 million acres of national parks, monuments, battlefields, and recreation areas across the U.S. It's a department that's more than 100 years old, and it's never been led by an Indigenous person. That may change. Charles Sams III is being considered to head the Park Service. ICT reporter Chris Adland wrote about this historic nomination, and he joins us now to tell us more about the nominee and his goals. Welcome, Chris.
Glad to be here.
So start us off. Tell us about Chuck Sams III. Who is he?
So he is Cayuse and Walla Walla of the Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla Reservation out here in Oregon. And, he's a former tribal administrator. He's got, 25 years of experience working, in tribal administration, nonprofit conservation, energy, and just things like that. So, experience in a lot of the realms and the fields that, I think he would be dealing with as National Park Service Director. Like you mentioned, he would be the first Indigenous National Park Service Director and the first Park Service Director since 2017. That role has been unfilled for years, and of course would serve under Interior Secretary Deb Haaland.
Chuck Sams III would, of course, have to be confirmed by the full U.S. Senate. Tell us, where is his nomination at right now?
Sure. So the hearing that he had this week was just that. It was a hearing. It was a chance for him to talk a little bit about his experience, his priorities, as well as field questions from members of the Senate Committee on Energy and Natural Resources. There was no action taken during the meeting, and what the committee will eventually do will forward his nomination favorably, unfavorably, or without kind of a recommendation, and then the full Senate will have to then come together and vote, and he'll require just a simple majority to be confirmed. And no dates have been set on any of that at this moment.
And of course, the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee is made up of both Democratic and Republican senators. Tell us, what kinds of questions did he get? And what do you think that the Republican talking points were and the Democratic talking points? Kind of what happened?
Most of the questions that he dealt with were, really around staffing issues that the Park Service has been dealing with. They're kind of chronically understaffed and struggling to find replacements and hire, and as well as low morale, in addition to billions in deferred maintenance that they need to take care of. And so that was the main thrust was finances and staffing issues, as well as just dealing with kind of the surging popularity of the National Park Service. I saw yesterday that Grand Teton National Park had already broken visitation records, only 9 months into the year. So, that's something he'll have to deal with. And that was kind of the thrust of most of the questions. The two skeptical senators on the committee, I guess, for lack of a better word, their questions surrounded more or had more to do with what they perceived of as his lack of experience, not having worked for or with the National Park Service at all during his career, to which, he responded that, his career basically is relevant experience to what you do with the National Park Service, whether that's his work in conservation, energy, or even just as a tribal administrator managing a huge Indian reservation and co-managing millions more acres with the federal government and state and local jurisdictions. So, so we'll see.
Chris, one of the other major problems of the National Park Service is allegations from women who work in the agency who say that they're being harassed. Is that something that Chuck Sams addressed himself?
Sure, it was something that senators brought up. It was something that he mentioned as one of his main priorities if he's confirmed, with him saying he's absolutely going to root this out and make it a welcoming place for all to work, and that he has throughout his life and will continue to have zero tolerance for any sort of harassment, gender discrimination, anything like that.
With the nomination of Chuck Sams to lead the National Park Service, and of course the leader of the Department of Interior, Deb Haaland, we're seeing more and more Native people in these really big roles. What do you think, and what have you heard and found in your reporting that this means on a grander scale?
I think for a lot of people, one, it's somewhat ironic that now we have an Indigenous person overseeing, land taken from Native people. But, in a bigger picture, I think, one thing he talked a lot about during his confirmation hearing was how, important it's going to be for him to be consulting with tribal nations before making decisions, as well as, incorporating traditional ecological knowledge and just the history, of, the original stewards of these lands, and how, he wants to show, the broader history of things to include, history that often has been, kind of left out.
Chris Adland, well, we'll follow your reporting as Chuck Sams' nomination continues along. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching. For all the latest news and updates, visit us anytime at IndianCountryToday.com. I'm Malia Chavez.
Sometimes you got to take a stand just because you know you can. Oh, you got to run, you got to run. Standing
This is Indian Country Today.